बिहारी जू की जाय। श्री गोविंद गोपीनाथ मदन मोहन जू की जाय। नित्य लप विष्णु विष्णुपाद रसत रसत शिष्मार भक्तिवेदांत नारायण गोस्वामी महाराज श्री गुरुदेव की जय। नित्य लप विष्णु विष्णुपाद श्री भक्तिवेदांत वामन गोस्वामी महाराज की जय। नित्य लप विष्णु विष्णुपाद रसत रसत शिष्मार भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी महाराज श्री प्रभुपाद की जय। नित्य लप विष्णु विष्णुपाद रसत रसत शिष्मार भक्ति प्रज्ञान केशव गोस्वामी महाराज की जय। नित्य लप विष्णु विष्णुपाद रसत रसत शिष्मार श्री भक्तिसिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी प्रभुपाद की जय। नित्य लप विष्णु महाभागवत श्री गोरक्षर बाबूजी महाराज की जय। नित्य लप विष्णु श्री सच्चिदानंद भक्ति विनोद ठाकुर की जय। नित्य लप विष्णु वैष्णव सार्वभौम श्री जगन्नाथ दास बाबूजी महाराज की जय। श्री रूपानुगौर्य गुरु वर्ग की जय। श्री रूप सनातन भट्ट रघुनाथ श्री जीव गोपाल पददास रघुनाथ पाठ गोस्वामी प्रभु की जय। श्री स्वरूप दामोदर राय रामानंदारी श्री गौर पार्षद वृंद की जय। नाम जय श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासरी गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री क्षेत्र मंडल गौर मंडल व्रज मंडल मथुरा वृंदावन धाम की जय। सर्व अभिष्ट प्रदाता गिरिराज महाराज की जय। श्री राधा कुंड श्यामा कुंड की जय। श्री मुन देवी गंगा देवी की जय। श्री तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी की जय। श्री भक्ति देवी की जय। श्री पूर्णमासी योग माया की जय। श्री गोपेश्वर महादेव की जय। श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। समागत गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। श्री निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। ओम ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। नमो ॐ विष्णुपदाय राधिकाय प्रियात्मने श्रीमद्भक्तिवेदान्त नारायणेति नामिने। नमो ॐ विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनेति नामिने। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो महावदन्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्य नाम्ने गौरत्विषे नमः। गुरुवे गौरचन्द्राय राधिकाय तदालये कृष्णाय कृष्णभक्ताय तरभक्ताय नमो नमः। यं प्रव्रजन्तमनुपेतमपेतकृत्यं द्वैपायनो विरहकातर आजुहाव पुत्रेति तन्मयतया तरवो विनेदुस्तं सर्वभूतहृदयं मुनिमानतोऽस्मि। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। शृण्वतं स्वकथा कृष्ण पुण्यश्रवणकीर्तना हृदन्तस्तो ह्यभद्राणि विधुनोति सुहृत्सतं। नष्टप्रयेष्वभद्रेषु नित्यं भगवतसेवया भगवत्युत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टकी। तवैवास्मि तवैवास्मि न जीवामि त्वया विना इति विज्ञाय राधे त्वां नायमां चरणान्तिकं। भक्त्या विहीना अपराधलक्षाय क्षिप्ताष्टकामादितरङ्गमध्ये Kripa Tvam Sharanam Prapanna Vrinde Namaste Charana Ravindam Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hari Bol, everybody. Dandavat Pranam. Raseshwari Mataji, Hari Bol. Madhavidi, Ganga Maji, Kishore Prabhu, Surevi Didi, and Indira Mataji. Dandavat Pranams to all of you. Hare Krishna. So I'm finally, after, I don't know how long, I think it was like 12 days or something. Something like that, 12, 13 days. I'm finally back in my room in Navadip. But Sudevi Didi, I got, like 4 or 5 days ago, I got a sore throat and it never went away. Finally, it's starting to go away, but my voice is a little bit strange now. Yeah, so gonna have to tolerate a strange voice. Yeah, and I do feel a bit tired actually. Anyways. I don't know what happened, but I got like just all my energies out. All right, so let's read. I'm reading from this, what is it? Bhagavat Pravaha. Okay. Liberation by peace and provocation. One who desires the highest goal in life should use one's intelligence to keep oneself safe on the spiritual platform, even in difficult situations like being neglected, insulted, ridiculed, envied, or agitated by ignorant people. Krishna then described the story of the tolerant Avanti Brahman who soberly met with the insults of people. Considering all insults to be the results of his own past deeds, he took shelter of the Lord. In the maturity of his realization, he sang a song called the Uddhava-gīta, which inspires detachment and devotion. So that's what we read about yesterday. I think we did 3 days of that chapter. Now we're beginning the next chapter, chapter 18, the philosophy of Sāṅkhya. And I want to try to finish this whole chapter today. So hopefully we can do it. Let's see. So chapter summary by Śrīla Bhakti Pramod Puri Gosvāmī Maharaj. But I think he did it with Śrīla Sarasvatī Ṭhākura's name. This chapter contains further instructions by the Lord dealing with Sāṅkhya, the analytical study of the elements of material nature. By the cultivation of knowledge, one can rise above the dualities of material existence so that the bewilderment of the minds can be dispelled. Before the creation of the universe, the seer and the seen are unmanifest, being in a dormant state. The Supreme Lord then unfolds the creation of the universe so that the conditioned souls are reawakened to activity. For creation, the 3 modes of material nature are agitated by the glance of the Lord, which manifests the Mahat Tattva. When the consciousness of the conditioned souls is awakened, the false ego is generated in conjunction with the 3 modes of material nature. The 3 modes of nature. False ego in the mode of ignorance creates 15 subtle forms of sense perception, and then the 15 physical elements. False ego in the mode of passion generates the 10 senses, and false ego in the mode of goodness causes the manifestation of the mind and 11 demigods that are the controlling deities of the senses. When all of these are amalgamated, the universal egg comes into existence. All these are enacted due to the presence of the Supersoul who pervades the creation. Then, from the navel of the Supreme Lord sprouts a lotus upon which Brahma is born. Lord Brahma then executes severe austerities under the direction of the Supreme Lord, and by the power invested in him as a result of his penance, Brahma then recreates the universe as it was before. Within the universe are various planetary systems. The heavenly planets are the abodes of the demigods. The space between heaven and earth is the residence of the ghosts and spirits. And the earth is the place for human beings and lower species of life. Above these are the planets of the great sages, and the lower regions of the universe are the residence of the demons and nagas. Whatever activities are performed under the direction of the three modes of material nature will carry one to these places of residence within the universe. Those who perform yoga and other types of austerity, such as accepting the renounced order of life, can reach the highest planets, Mahar, Janas, Tapas, and Satya. Devotional service is transcendental to the modes of material nature, and thus the goal of the devotees is not a material planet. The destination of the devotees is the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the spiritual sky. This universe is the place of fruitive activities, and their reactions are manifest under the control of time and the three modes of material nature. Whatever is seen to exist in this world is simply a product of these modes, which work under the direction of the Supreme Lord. The creation of the universe is enacted from subtle to gross, and the annihilation is enacted from gross to subtle. When all this is dissolved, only the Supreme Lord remains situated in his transcendental position of self-satisfaction. When one cultivates this understanding of the Supreme Lord and his creation, the mind will rise above the dualities of material existence. This understanding is known as Sāṅkhya. So now we begin text 1. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Atate sampravakshami Sāṅkhyam purvar vinishchitam Yad vigyaya puman sadhyo Jahyar vaikalpikam brahman. Lord Shri Krishna said, "My dear Uddhav, I shall now describe to you the philosophy of Sāṅkhya, which was propounded by authorities such as Kapila in ancient times. By understanding this philosophy, one can immediately give up all desires for material happiness, which ultimately result in distress and which are born of duality." Sārārtha-darśinī, commentary by Śrīla Viśvanātha Cakravartī Ṭhākura. This chapter describes the creation and annihilation of the cosmic manifestation. Such creation and dissolution is the subject matter of Sāṅkhya philosophy. It has been established from the Uddhava-gīta in the previous chapter that the cause of the living entity's happiness and distress is the accepting of the subtle body, of which the mind is the principal component, as the self. This is the sum and substance of the material concept of life. This misunderstanding can be eliminated when the difference between matter and spirit is clearly understood. The analytical study of material nature and the difference between matter and spirit are the subject matters of the Sāṅkhya system of philosophy. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya commentary by Śrīla Bhaktisiddhānta Sarasvatī Gosvāmī Prabhupāda. Those who adore the advancement of materialistic knowledge are generally averse to the service of the Supreme Lord, who is fully transcendental. Those who are satisfied to confine themselves to the material concept of life cannot understand the value of service to the transcendental personality of Godhead. The Sāṅkhya philosophy that is presented in this chapter is the one that was propounded by Lord Kapila in the 3rd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, and not the atheistic Sāṅkhya taught by the impostor Kapila. The material elements are generated one from another, from subtle to gross. One should not imagine that such a creation takes place automatically without the superintendence of the Supreme Lord. Such a conception of evolution can only be accepted by those who are in the densest darkness of ignorance and never entertained by the devotees of the Lord. One second, just checking. Hare Krishna Gargrajji. Oh my God. I didn't share my screen. I am so sorry, guys. That's so strange. Yeah, okay, I am a little bit spaced out today. I should have checked the comments earlier. Anyways, thanks for sticking with me. Do you want me to go back and just read the Sanskrit so that you can... I'll just go back and just read this first verse so that you'll have said all the Sanskrit verses in this chapter. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Atate Sampravakshyami Sāṅkhyam Purvar Vinishchitam Yad Vigyaya Puman Sadhyo Jahyad Vaikalpikam Brahmam. Okay, and now we'll read the Sanskrit of text 2. Asij jnanamato yartha ekameva vikalpitam yada viveka nipuna ado krita yuge yuge. Pranams Gargarajji. Hare Krishna. Okay, during the Krita Yuga, when men were very expert in spiritual understanding, and also previous to that, during the period of annihilation, the seer existed alone, non-different from that which is seen. Sārārtha-darśinī. Real knowledge entails the understanding of Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. This is confirmed by Sutta Gosvāmī in the Srimad Bhagavatam, 1st canto, 2nd chapter, verse 11. Vadanti tat tattva vidas tattvam yad jnanam. Oh my God, this is such a famous verse. Vadanti tat tattva vidas tattvam yad jnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavan iti shabdyate. Learned transcendentalists who know the absolute truth call this non-dual substance Brahman, Paramatma, or Bhagavan. The word Atha means complete. The word Avikalpam means the complete knowledge, or Brahman, who has no substitute. In Satya Yuga, however, people are Viveka Nipuna, or experts in intelligent discrimination, and thus there is no difference between their vision and reality. Seeing everything as the potency of the Supreme Lord, they do not artificially create duality between themselves and other living entities. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the Absolute Truth, who dissipates the darkness of ignorance. The yuga in which Satya, or truth, was fully manifest is called Satya Yuga. This truth was instructed by the Lord to the heart of Brahma. At that time, non-dual spiritual knowledge was not obscured by the material propensity of the minds to accept something and then later on reject it. In due course of time, however, understanding of the non-dual truth gradually diminished. 3. Tanmaya falarupena kevalam nirvikalpitam vangmano gocharam satyam dvidha samabhavad brihat. Thereafter, the Supreme Absolute Truth, who is beyond the jurisdiction of the mind and speech, who is one without a second, and who is completely transcendental, manifested himself in two features: the material nature and the living entities who are trying to enjoy the objects manifested by that nature. Sārārtha-darśinī. The Supreme Brahman is one absolute truth. From him manifested his external energy, known as Maya, and his marginal energy, the and from his marginal energy, the infinitesimal spirit souls. These two manifestations are non-different from the one Supreme Lord. The material nature and the living entities are eternal energies of the Supreme Lord, and they are beyond the comprehension of the mind and speech. While even the material nature is beyond the comprehension of mind and speech. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. The conditioned souls imagine themselves as enjoyers of the material nature because they have no understanding of its connection with the Supreme Lord. Having given up the shelter of the Supreme Lord, influenced by this mundane conception, the conditioned souls try to attain knowledge by mental speculation. This thing we're reading up to verse 29, okay. Tayore katara prakriti so bhayatmika jnanam tvanyatamo bhava purusha so bhitiyate. Of the two manifestations, one is the material nature, which embodies both the subtle causes and the products of matter, and the other is the living entity, who considers himself an enjoyer. Okay, material nature embodies both the subtle causes and the products of matter. Okay, Sārārtha-darśinī. Among the two energies under consideration, one is the material nature and the other is the living entity. Maya is a form of cause and effect, and the living entity is a form of knowledge. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. In the material creation, the knower of matter, the object of knowledge, and knowledge have appeared in three forms. The soul is the knower, or seer, who considers himself to be the enjoyer of the object of knowledge. Unadulterated devotional service is the constitutional duty of the spirit soul. When one gives up that service, he becomes a servant of ignorance by attempting to become the master of all he surveys. Tamo raja satam iti prakritera bhavam guna maya praksho bhyamanaya purushanu matena cha. When I glance over the material nature in my form as the Purush incarnation, it becomes agitated so that the three material modes, goodness, passion, and ignorance, became manifested to fulfill the desires of the conditioned souls. Sārārtha-darśinī. The Supreme Lord agitates material nature through his plenary portion, the Purusha incarnation. The creation is necessary to award an opportunity to the conditioned souls to cultivate karma, jnana, or bhakti according to their desires at the time of the previous annihilation. The living entity's fate or destiny necessitates the material creation. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. After being agitated by the glance of the Lord, the three modes of material nature compete with each other for the control of the conditioned souls, so that creation, maintenance, and annihilation are also always at odds with one another. The three modes of material nature are the causes of creation, maintenance, and annihilation. Tebhya sama bhavat sutra mahan sutrena sangyuta tato vikurvato jato yo hankaro vimohana. From these modes, the first transformation that takes place is the Mahat-tattva. The transformation of the Mahat-tattva then generated the false ego, which is the cause of the living entity's bewilderment. Sārārtha-darśinī. The first transformation of the modes of nature is the power of action in a subtle form. This first transformation is known as Mahat-tattva. Mahat-tattva is invested with activity and knowledge for the sake of the bewildered, conditioned souls. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. The Mahat-tattva came into existence from the three modes of material nature and later on, the false ego manifested from that Mahatattva. The false ego dictates material enjoyment or dry renunciation by covering the living entities with desires for karma and gyan. As one's devotional service to the Lord slackens, these two tendencies automatically develop, just as the diminishing of light automatically brings an increase in darkness. Vikarikas tajasascha tamasaschaitaham trivirit tan matrendriya manasam karanam chid achinmayaha. False ego, which encompasses both matter and spirit, manifests in three categories: vikarika, taijasa, and tamasa, arising from the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance. The five objects, the senses, and the minds are creations of the false ego. Oh, interesting. The five sense objects, the senses, and the mind are creations of the false ego. Yeah. Okay. Sārārtha-darśinī. False ego manifests the sense objects, the mind, and the connection of the eternal spirit soul with the temporary material body. Although false ego is itself a product of matter, it remains with the spirit soul as its designation. Thus, the tight knot that binds the spirit soul to material existence is affected by the false ego. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. The three categories of false ego are sattvika or vaikārika, rajasa or taijasa, and tamasika or tamas. These three manifestations of false ego transform into five sense objects, the five knowledge-acquiring senses, and the mind. The false ego forms a junction between the eternal soul and the material body. Desiring to lord it over the material energy of the Supreme Lord, the conditioned souls come under the control of the three modes of material nature, which causes them to assume temporary identities in the bodily concept of life. Arthastan matrikaj jagye tamasad indriyani cha taijasad taijasad devata asan ekadasha chavaikritat. From false ego and the mode of ignorance, tamasa, tamasa, the five objects of perception and the five gross elements were generated. From false ego and the mode of passion, rajasa, the 10 senses were generated. And from false ego and the mode of goodness, sattvika, arose the 11 demigods who control the senses and mind. Sārārtha-darśinī. Sound, the sense of hearing, and ether are products of false ego and the mode of ignorance. Then the sense of touch and air were produced. In this way, all of the elements and the perception of them were produced from subtle to gross. The senses are created from false ego in the mode of passion, and from false ego in the mode of goodness come 11 demigods, who are controllers of the mind and senses. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. The five material elements were created from the tamas false ego. The senses were created from the rajas false ego, and the demigods controlling the senses were created from the sattvika false ego. One second, I just need to drink this from my throat. Let me check the comments. Hari Bol, Prajuna Prabhu, and Mantra Murti Mataji. Okay. Maya sanchodita bhava sarve sanghatakarina andam utpadayam asur mamayatanam uttamam. According to my will, all the elements combine to form the universal egg, which then becomes one of my transcendental abodes. Sārārtha-darśinī. The word bhava refers to all the ingredients that manifest in the material universe. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. By the combination of the elements manifested from the three modes of material nature, the universe was created. Tasmin aham samabhavam ande salila samstito mamanabhyam abhut parmam vishvakyam tatra chatmabhu. Thereafter, I appeared within the water of the universe in the form of Narayan, and from my navel a lotus flower called Vishva sprouted, upon which Brahma was born. Sārārtha-darśinī. The Supreme Lord said, in the water within the universe, I appeared as Garbhodakṣayi Vishnu. Four-headed Brahma was then born from the lotus called Vishva that grew from my navel. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. Mahavishnu, who lies in the causal ocean, first created the universe and then entered within it. The universe, which resembled an egg, was floating in the water of the causal ocean. From the navel of Lord Garbhodakṣayi Vishnu sprouted a lotus called Vishva, on which Brahma was born. This Brahma is the original personality of the whole community of enjoyers. Sosrijat tapasa yukto rajasa maranugrahat lokansa palan vishvatma bhurbhuva swar iti tridha. Lord Brahma, the soul of the universe, being empowered with the mode of passion, performed great austerities by my mercy, and thus generated the three planetary systems called Bhur, Bhuvar, and Swar, along with their presiding deities. Okay. By the strength of the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Brahma, who was born from Lord Vishnu's lotus-like navel, created Bhuloka, Bhuvarloka, and Swargaloka, Maharloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, and Satyaloka, as well as the 7 lower planetary systems, beginning from Attala. All of these planets exist within this universe. Devanam oka asit swar, bhutanam cha bhuva padam, martyadinam cha bhurloka, siddhanam tritayat param. Swargaloka was created for the residence of the demigods. Bhuvarloka was created for ghosts, and Bhuloka was created as the residence of human beings. Beyond these 3 planetaries, other planets, beginning from Maharloka, were created as the residence of perfect beings whose studies performed under the modes of material nature. Living entities take birth within these 3 worlds. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. Planets such as Attala were created for the Nagas, or serpents. Acting under the influence of the 3 modes of material nature, human beings are forced to suffer and enjoy the fruits of their karma as they are transmigrate within the limit of these 3 planetary systems. Yogasya tapasaschaiva nyasasya gatayo mala maharjanas tapasatyam bhakti yogasya margati. By practice of mystic yoga, undergoing great austerities, and accepting the renounced order of life, the superior destinations of Maharloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, and Satyaloka are attained. But by executing devotional service unto me, one attains my eternal abode, Vaikuntha. Sārārtha-darśinī. Performance of pious activities, Ashtanga Yoga, and renunciation lead one to planets such as Maharloka. Pure devotees of the Lord attain the transcendental abode of the Lord, Vaikuntha. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. By the strength of their austerity and renunciation, living entities obtain superior destinations like Maharloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, and Satyaloka. Attainment of these planets is temporary because after the merit achieved by one's practice is exhausted, one must return to earth. On the other hand, by the influence of devotional service to the Supreme Lord, one attains the eternal abode, Vaikuntha. Maya kalatmana dhatra karma yuktam idang jagat guna pravaha etasmin unmajjati nimajjati. The results of fruit of work are awarded within this world by me, the Supreme Creator, acting as time. The results of fruit of work are awarded by me, acting as time. Thus, one sometimes rises up toward the surface of this mighty river of the modes of material nature, and sometimes again becomes submerged. Gauḍīya Sārārtha-darśinī. The destination by one's fruitive activities that are performed under the influence of the modes of nature is temporary. The Supreme Lord, in his form as time, is the giver of the fruits of one's actions. In this world, where all activities are carried out under the influence of the three modes of nature, one sometimes rises to higher destinations, such as Satyaloka, and sometimes is submerged in the lower destinations, such as Patalaloka. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. Those who do not engage in the devotional service of the Supreme Lord are sometimes drowned in the river of the material modes of nature, and sometimes brought to its surface. The Supreme Lord, acting as providence, causes the living entities who suffer and enjoy the fruits of their karma to wander about throughout the 14 worlds. Anurbrihat krishastulo yo yo bhava prasiddhyati sarvopyu bhaya sangyukta prakritya purushena cha. Whatever visibly exists within the material world, whether small or great, thin or stout, certainly contains both the material nature and its enjoyer, the spirit soul. Sārārtha-darśinī. This verse describes how the effect is present within the cause. The word bhava in this verse means effect. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. Whatever is seen to exist within this world, whether very great or insignificant, is a combination of the conditioned souls who are acting as enjoyers, and the material nature which he is trying to enjoy. Yastu yasyadirantashcha savai madhyam chatasya san vikaro vyavaharartho yatha taijasaktiva. Gold and earth originally exist as ingredients. From gold, one may make a golden bracelet and earrings, and from earth, one may make clay pots and plates. The original ingredients, gold and earth, exist before the products are made from them, and when the products are eventually destroyed, the original ingredients, gold and earth, will remain. Therefore, because the ingredients are present in the beginning and at the end, they must also be present in the middle phase, taking the form of subject to which we give a particular name, such as a bracelet. Sārārtha-darśinī. In this verse, the Lord explains that the original cause is present in its effect. Giving the example of gold and clay as the causal ingredients of many different products, we assign various names to such temporary products, although their essential nature continues to be that of the ingredient and not of the temporary product, such as a bracelet or earring. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. Under the influence of time, an element as a cause may transform into many products or effects, just as gold is transformed when we manufacture gold earrings, and earth is transformed when we make clay pots. These transformations are temporary, and at the beginning, in the middle, or at the ends, The essential characteristic of the cause remains unchanged. Yadupadaya purvastu bhavo vikurute pam adiranto yada yasya tat satyam abhidhiyate. A material object which is composed of an essential ingredient creates another material object as a transformation. Thus, one created object becomes the cause and basis of another created object. Any particular object may therefore be called real in that it possesses the basic nature of another object that constitutes its origin, as well as its final state. Sārārtha-darśinī. Although cause and effect are both accepted as factual, the Vedas place more stress on the cause than the effect. Earth and a clay pot must both be considered factual. For example, a potter becomes the instrumental cause, taking some earth to manufacture clay pots. Both the earth as the cause and the clay pot as the effect are real. The primary cause of both earth and the clay pots is material nature. Because the cause is present in the effect, they both must be real. This is called tat satyam in the language of the Vedas. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has declared himself as the original cause of everything. There is no opportunity for the impersonalist to give some other interpretation in this regard. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. There is no objection to accepting all the objects of our perception as reality, but their temporary transformable nature must be accounted for. Still, it is never reasonable to call any materially created object false. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the original reality, and by finding that material nature is a temporary manifestation, one should not imagine him or his actions to be false. Of course, the temporarily manifested transformations cannot be accepted as the ultimate reality, which is understood from the Vedas to be the eternal reality of Vaikuntha. Yeah, because something that's temporary can't be considered ultimate reality. Prakritir yasyopadanam adhara purusha para sato bhivyanjaka kalo brahma tat pritayam tvaham. Material nature, which is the original ingredient of the creation, the Supreme Lord, who is the shelter of the material nature, and time, are none different from me, the absolute truth. Sārārtha-darśinī. The Supreme Lord is the cause of all causes. Mahavishnu is his plenary portion, and time represents the Lord's activity. In this way, time and nature are always subservient to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who creates, maintains, and annihilates all that exists through the agency of his potencies and plenary portions. All followers of the Vedas accept that material nature is the ingredient cause of the cosmic manifestation, and that the Supreme Lord is the shelter of all energies. The Lord agitates material nature by glancing over her, and then continues to superintend her activities in his form as time. Thus, material nature always works under the direction of the Supreme Lord. Although the cosmic creation is certainly a transformation of energy, the Supreme Lord himself is unchanging, supreme. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. It should be understood that the instrumental cause invests its potency into the ingredient cause under the control of time, and thus they are non-different from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sarga pravartate tavat porva paryena nityasha mahan guna visargartha stityanto yavarikshanam. As long as the Supreme Personality of Godhead continues to glance upon the material nature, the universe will continue to exist, manifesting through procreation of the great and variegated flows of universal creation for the sake of the conditioned souls. Sārārtha-darśinī. By the interactions of the three modes of material nature, various types of bodies are created, and by procreation, this process seems to go on perpetually. In order to maintain the conditioned souls who have the spirit of material enjoyment, the creation continues to exist for as long as the Lord glances over it. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. Material nature and time cannot function independently. They are active only as long as the Supreme Lord continues to glance over them. Time and the cosmic manifestation are created just to give the conditioned souls who are averse to the Supreme Lord a field of activities. Viranmaya satyamano lokakalpa vikalpaka panchatvaya visheshaya kalpate bhuvanai saha. I manifest the universal form which displays endless variety through repeated creation, maintenance, and destruction of the planetary systems. Originally containing everything within itself, my universal form manifests the varieties of creation by arranging the coordinated combination of the 5 gross elements. Sārārtha-darśinī. The Supreme Lord, in his form as time, pervades the entire universe. After creating all planets and living entities through the agency of the material nature, he finally withdraws the entire creation. The word panchatva in this verse means death. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. The Supreme Lord, in his form as time, repeatedly creates, maintains, and annihilates this universe, the universe. Ane praliyate martyam, anam dhana suliyate, dhana bhumo praliyante, bhumir gandhe praliyate, apsu praliyate gandha, apsas cha svagune rase, liyate jyotishi raso, jyoti rupe praliyate, rupam vayo sacha sparshe, liyate sopichambare, ambaram shabdatan matra, indriyani svayonishu. Yonir vaikarike somya, liyate manasishvare, shabdo bhutadimapyeti, bhutadir mahati prabhu, saliyate mahansveshu, guneshu gunavattama, te vyakte sampraliyante, tatkale liyate vyaye, kalo maya maye jive, jiva atmani maya je, atma kevala atmasto, vikalpapaya lakshana. What verses was that? That was up to 27. Okay. Let me just check the comments. Okay. At the time of annihilation, the bodies of the conditioned souls merge into food. Food merges into grain, and the grains merge into the earth. The earth merges into its quality of fragrance. Fragrance merges into water, and water merges into its quality of taste. Taste merges into fire, and fire merges into its quality of form, which then merges into the sky. Sky then merges into its quality of sound. The senses of the living beings merge into their predominating deities, and these demigods merges into the mind. The mind merges into false ego and goodness, and sound merges into false ego and the mode of ignorance. Finally, false ego merges into the total material substance, which then merges with the modes of nature. The modes of nature then merge with the unmanifest nature, and the unmanifest merges into time. Time then merges into the Supersoul, who provides inspiration to all living beings. Thus, I remain alone after the dissolution of the universe, self-satisfied in the transcendental position. Sārārtha-darśinī. In this regard, the Vedic evidence can be cited. Tasmadva etasmadat mana akasha sambhuta akasha dvayu. Vayurami agneirapa arvya prithivya oshadya oshadivyonam anatpurushaha. From the Supreme Personality of Godhead, ether is manifested. From ether, air was manifested. From air, fire was manifested. From fire, water was manifested. From water, earth was manifested. From earth, medicinal herbs were manifested. From herbs, grains are manifested. And the living entities subsist on food grains. This is a description of the process of creation. And the process of annihilation is a reversal of this. It is stated that just before the time of annihilation, there will be no rainfall for 100 years. Oh my God. And as a result, there will be no food grains. Because of no food grains upon which the living entities subsist, all material bodies will perish. Thus, there will be complete famine, and the grains, along with their seeds, will merge into the earth, and the earth will merge into smell. In this way, the process of annihilation will continue. Man, and just imagine, we've been around for that countless times. The earth will be dried up by the Samvartak and then burnt by fire emanating from the mouth of Lord Sankarshan. After that, there will be only the subtle qualities of the elements and nothing else. The senses will merge into their own cause, the senses will merge into its own cause, the Taijasa false ego. The Taijasa false ego will merge into the Vaikārika false ego. And the Vaikārika false ego will merge, and then the mind will merge into the supreme controller. The mind is the controller of the working senses and knowledge-acquiring senses. The sky will merge into the sense objects will merge into the Tamasa false ego. The three false egos will merge into the Mahatattva. The Mahatattva will merge into the material modes of nature, and the three modes of nature the three modes of material nature will merge into the unmanifested spiritual nature. The three modes of material nature will merge into the unmanifested material nature, pradhan. The neutral state of existence of the three modes of material nature is called dissolution. In this state of neutrality, the unmanifested material nature will merge into time. Still, it is impossible to perfectly describe the dissolution of material nature. It has therefore been stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam 12.4.19 as follows: Natasya kalavayaiva parinamadayo guna anadyanantaman avyaktam nityam karanam avyayam. The unmanifest material nature is not subjected to the 6 kinds of transformation caused by the influence of time. Rather, it has no beginning and no end. It is the eternal and infallible cause of creation. Material nature has existed since time immemorial. In the story of Jayanta, when Antariksha describes the annihilation, there is no mention of the material nature's annihilation. Therefore, it is said in the Srimad Bhagavatam 12.4.22, Laya prakrititko hyesha purusha vyaktayor yada shaktaya sampraliyante vishvasa kala vidruta. This is the annihilation called prakriti, during which the energies of the Supreme Lord and his unmanifest material nature, dissembled by the force of time, are deprived of their potencies and merge into him. Material nature, along with our 3 modes, is dissolved, so that her power of creation is withdrawn. The living entities are actually not subjects to annihilation. They are eternal and inexhaustible, belonging to the Lord's superior energy known as Tatashta Shakti. There is no question of the living entities losing their real identity and spiritual form. After annihilation of the universe, The living entities merge into the existence of the Supersoul. Although they merge, they do not lose their individuality. Okay. We'll end with this commentary here. After Gauḍīya Bhāṣya, After the temporary material manifestations are merged into the respective causes, those conditioned souls who have qualified for their liberated state of existence achieve an inclination toward the Lord's service. The segmented manifestation of time then places the liberated souls on the platform of eternal service within the realm of undivided time. Until the conditioned souls achieve shelter at the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, they continue to remain under the control of the material nature. The influence of segmented time creates various kinds of inauspiciousness for living entities. The conditioned souls struggle for existence under the control of the three modes of material nature. Being conditioned by the modes of nature, they swing like a pendulum, alternating between a state of material enjoyment and one of renunciation. As long as there is no resolute determination to engage in the devotional service of the Supreme Lord, such an incompatible state of being will continue to exist. Okay, so there are only 2 more chapters left in this. Oh, should we finish it? It'll take literally 2 minutes. I'm going to finish it. I hope you guys don't mind. Oh, Śrīla has to go for our other class. Okay. Yeah, if you don't mind, yeah, I'll just read this, and I can send this to Śrīla Mataji so she can read it on her own. Okay. Evam anvikshamanasya katam vaikalpiko brahma manaso hriditishtheta vyomni varkodayetama. When the sun rises, darkness is dispelled. Similarly, when factual understanding of the universal dissolution is realized, the illusory conceptions of duality cannot remain in the mind of the serious transcendentalist. Even if such illusion enters his mind, it will not remain. Sārārtha-darśinī. Due to illusion, one considers the real body to be the self. But by carefully analyzing the difference between matter and spirit, by studying the Sāṅkhya philosophy, such illusion will vanquish, and one will come to realize that he is a pure spirit soul. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. Just as the rising of the sun dispels darkness, an understanding of Lord Krishna's teachings to Uddhava dissipates one's ignorance. One who realizes the truth of these instructions will be relieved of the bodily conception of life. Even if some residual material attachment sometimes crops up, it will not remain due to the strength of one's spiritual realization. Esha Sāṅkhya vidhi prokta samshaya granti bedhana pratiloma anulomabhyam paravara drishamaya. Thus, I, the original seer of everything material and spiritual, have imparted to you this knowledge of Sāṅkhya, which destroys the illusion of doubt by a scientific analysis of creation and annihilation. The Sāṅkhya destroys the illusion of doubt by a scientific analysis of creation and annihilation. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. The material mind accepts and rejects many different understandings of reality, generating innumerable false arguments about the actual process of perfection. But those who have taken shelter at the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord can see everything in its right perspective. By directly and indirectly discussing these topics of the Supreme Lord and his energies, the conditioned souls can be liberated from material bondage and attain eternal service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus ends the translation of the 18th chapter of the Uddhava-gīta, entitled The Philosophy of Sāṅkhya, with the commentaries of Śrīla Viśvanātha Cakravartī Ṭhākura and chapter summary and purports by Śrīla Bhaktisiddhānta Sarasvatī Gosvāmī Prabhupāda. So tomorrow we will read chapter 19, The Three Modes of Nature and Beyond. All right, I'm going to just do a quick Jaidvani since I went over time. Jai Shri Sachinandan Gaur Hari Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Vinod Bihari Ju Ki Jai, Jai Srila Gurudev Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada, Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai, Jai Srila Param Gurudev Ki Jai, Jai Srila Bhaktisiddhānta Sarasvatī Prabhupada Ki Jai, Shri Rupanu Gauriya Guru Varga Ki Jai, Shri Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jeev Gopal Bhatta Das Raghunath Shar Gosvāmī Prabhu ki jai. Swaparshad Shri Gaur Hari ki jai. Shri Hari Naam Sankirtan ki jai. Shri Giriraj Maharaj ki jai. Shri Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki jai. Shri Hari Naam Sankirtan ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Uddhava-gīta ki jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Shri Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Go. Vrindai Tulsi Devai Priyai Keshavasacha Krishna Bhakti Pradadevi Sattvatai Namo Namaha Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Dandavat pranams everybody. Thanks for letting me go overtime. I'll see you all tomorrow. Yes, Indira Mataji, I will. I actually need to get it better because I need to post a video on Vaina Devotion, the next Chaitanya Bhagavat reading. Like, I need to record it tomorrow. So I really need to get that taken care of. Oh, I forgot to do Kirtan. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, God Hari Bol. Alright, Jai Shri Radhe. Alright, I'll see you all tomorrow. Dandavat pranams. Hare Krishna.